Mr. Seun Oni join us virtually to lend in his deep wealth of knowledge into some of these developing stories. Mr. Seun Oni is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Courier. Hello and a very warm morning to you, Mr. Seun. Thank you for joining us on Morning Express.
Okay, good morning. Good to see you again.
Well, I can't really see you, but it's good to have you and hear your voice. First things first, let's go to River State, where tensions continue to escalate. Governor Fubara has been fighting really tough against some powers that be. And now we hear that the River State House of Assembly is issuing an impeachment notice, or has started an impeachment process on the governor, citing about 19 infractions, one of which they described as misconduct. How would you react to this development coming in today, where talks have been ongoing about how to settle the dispute in River State?
It's a most unfortunate situation that we have found ourselves in Rivers. The issue started like a minor issue. It escalated, became a long-fought legal tussle. Eventually, the Supreme Court had to, as a final court, had to decide on who is right and who is wrong.
Yeah.
Now the governor is at the mercy of the House of Assembly. I did say on one of my appearances that we have a Yoruba adage. It's a witty saying. It suggests that you don't come back from the court and still remain close friends. The thinking behind that is that a whole lot of anger, a lot of blue-red bile would have gone into the period of court processes and the rest of them. It must have taken a toll on both of the parties. That's exactly what we are seeing in Rivers. And I did make a call that day that the elders of that state, well-meaning people from the South-South region, they still had very little time to save the situation. And I strongly believe that the time is not completely, it has completely not thinned out, but it's thinning out at the window they had to save the situation. And I hope they can still do that in a few days from now. Because what we are seeing here is the governor who is trying to posture, more trying to buy in the sentiment of the populace. We also see on the other side the House of Assembly, who is trying to hold to his gun, being the Supreme Court favorite. Of course, when I say favorite, I'm not casting aspersion on the Apex Court. I'm simply saying the decision of the Apex Court favors the lawmakers. The governor is pandering to the crowd, and that's exactly not the move he should be making now. We have seen from the evidence that we have gathered from both sides, the governor is very quick to come to the public, but the backdoor channel that is supposed to take advantage of, and for public understanding, it's just good to state it here that the 27 people on the other side, for more than a year and several months, they've not been paid their salaries and allowances. And up to yesterday, I can say out of this morning, nothing has been done to ensure that they get what constitutionally belongs to them. And so if you are just going there to appear and you are writing letters, you and I know it will not move. So there is a need for a bit of a shift here and there, especially for peace and good governance to take the front seat again in Rivers State. That's exactly where we have found ourselves. These men, being the one that the Supreme Court judgment had actually favored, will not shift ground. And if the governor is not careful, this is just the beginning of his exit from office.
Well, Mr. Seun, the lawmakers had cited 19 infractions, which might be a little bit too much for us to list out here, but I have a list of them. And however, the state government had said that no such correspondence had been received by them from the River State House of Assembly. Should we believe the words of the Matthew Maule-led River State House of Assembly, or should we believe the words of the SSG to the River State government in this situation? We all know how frantic the governor has been in his bid to ensure that he remains in office and not get impeached. What's the situation like? What at the end of the day, who should we believe in this case?
No, the facts are there. The jury is out. The secretary to River State government, Dr. Danagogo, he was a former sports minister at some point during the tail end of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan's administration.
Yeah,
is a known face. The speaker and of course the spokesperson of River State House of Assembly had also put their position out, and I did alluded to that much earlier. It's not about who to believe or who not to believe. It's more about what is being done. Is that the right thing? On the side of the government, on the side of Governor Fubara, he thinks buying public sentiment is the right way to go. And from what we are seeing, it will not help him so much. The House of Assembly on the other side thinks holding to his guns, having been the one that the Supreme Court was very clear in their judgment. It was quite unambiguous that without the government, the governor in this instance, who is the leader of the executive, working with them, there is really no government. Like one former Supreme Court erudite justice did say, you really can't clap with one hand. And that is the bane of the judgment. But what I'm saying, and what most people are saying, is that holding to your guns, either on the executive side or being very strict on the legislature side, will only fan the embers of crisis in River State. The tension is at all-time high in the Garden City. People, before you know it, might begin to take laws into their hands. There is a limit to which leaders at that level can caution their followers. Because at the, what you call the ground zero level, when you get to the grassroots, it gets to a point that there are some unruly elements that a call from the government house or a call from the legislative quarters will not be able to stop them from doing the dirty and the bad deeds. And River State people, the masses, will be the loser. If there is any escalation of this crisis and it turns to any form of, I was a bit much younger a few years ago, when we had this turbulent kind of situation under Obasanjo's regime in Ekiti State. I know exactly how these things work. I know how the tension in the state capital and other parts of Ekiti State, how it actually was at the time. I was much younger, but I knew how tense it was. And our reporters in Rivers, they are giving the same, when I got the description, I exactly know where this is heading to. If the two sides are not tactful about how this issue is handled. I said it's not about who is right or wrong. It's not about what is best for River State. And what is best for River State is that they must come back to Georgia. You can't war all the time. They have been fighting, they've done all the legal works. Now it's time to sit on the table and settle this issue amicably in a way and manner that River State will not be the loser.
But Mr. Seun, sitting on the table and having this discussion is something that Governor Fubara has tried doing on several occasions. If you remember, there were talks about him resolving the issue internally. The president had waded in. The Pandev leaders had also met with the president to talk about this, and the president sent a message to the governor, sent a message to the governor via the Pandev leaders. Following this, the governor had invited Right Honorable Matthew Amaule and his 26-member house to have a meeting with him to resolve some certain issues, which he had highlighted, part of which would be a way to pay some of their outstanding salaries, bonuses, and allowances and all of that, and also amongst many other things. However, that meeting did not hold because Matthew Amaule and his men did not show up to the meeting. The governor took initiative and drove all the way to the Rivers State House of Assembly to also meet with the speaker, whom he cited that he had already called or informed beforehand. And when he got to the House of Assembly, the gate was shut. There was nobody there. 2 times the governor has tried to have these talks, but somehow Matthew Amaule has been frustrating his efforts. Do you still think it's the fault of Governor Fubara that this issue has not been resolved?
Chijoke, let's not use the term fault, because it also gets trying to push the blame on someone's table. Let's start from the conversation immediately after the Supreme Court judgment. It was the House of Assembly who sent the first missive, the first correspondence. The response from the governor's side, the executive side, was that they were waiting for the CTC, the certified true copy of the Supreme Court judgment. Days later, the certified true copy was everywhere. And the governor, instead of using back channel is part of, in fact, in the United States, because you are very quick to talk about sinner crimes. Lobbying is a profession. People are professional lobbyists, and the job they do is to go through back channels and resolve issues as is. Instead of going through the back channels and having a conversation with them, knowing that for a year plus you are feuding, he went first to the social media. That's what I'm saying. You can't be pandering to the crowd. You can't do that. Because there are moral issues, there are legal issues. And we must get it very clear. It's a moral issue that all this crisis was as a result of individuals trying to control the till, the public till. That's a moral issue. We all agree. But it has gone past a moral issue to a legal issue. At this point, the Supreme Court had made pronouncement. Someone again also rightly put it, that the Supreme Court is not final because it is infallible. It is infallible because it is final. In other words, if you don't agree with the judgment of the Supreme Court, you can only appeal to God in prayer, but you must execute what the Supreme Court has said. That is the point we have found ourselves.
But the governor has started trying on his part to execute some of these things, part of which is the re-election or holding of the local government polls, which is coming up in just a short time. He has been doing his best. Don't you think so, Mr. Seun? Because it appears as if entirely I will still use the term fault. Entirely the large bulk of the fault is now being heaped on Governor Fubara's head. And he has only been trying to fight certain key elements in River State's political space that has not allowed him to fully work as a governor.
Chijoke, let me pick it again. At this point, the law is not in his favor. Public sentiment might favor him. And that's a moral issue. That's the point I'm making. And he is not helping matter. He's still tilting to public sentiment rather than following things legally. You raise the issue of local government election.
Yes.
The same House of Assembly, in the first letter they wrote, they were very clear that his nomination of that committee runs foul of the law. Bring them back to us. That's a legal issue. Another legal issue is that correspondence between the governor and House of Assembly is not for social media. And you don't just drive your convoy to a House of Assembly. No, you write letter to them, they agree on a date and write a letter back to you. The public must be made to know this. This is an institutional matter. You don't do it like you are doing a community meeting. No, it's not a community meeting. It's a structured system. You want to present before the State House of Assembly, you write a letter to them. You wait until they give you date and time. Then you can drive there. In fact, you can mobilize talking drum and the rest of them. That's what I'm saying.
I agree that the governor might have been misguided in some of the channels of communication that he tried reaching out to the Rivers State House of Assembly with. And also the fact that, some of these correspondences were not supposed to be made public, especially not on social media. But let's talk about the tensions in terms of the general political sphere of Rivers State. We all know how very volatile Rivers State can be, especially when it comes to issues of communal clashes and all of that. And recently we saw some video of people who had described themselves as militants with posing with guns and warning that if there's an impeachment process instituted against Governor Fubara, that there won't be peace in Rivers State. Now, of course, this has been brushed off by a lot of people, including the Minister of the FCT, Barrister Seun Oni. But in your thoughts, do you think that if Fubara is impeached, tensions might escalate and there might be a disarray of peace in the state?
I'm a social scientist, and one of the things I know about human conduct is that it's not cast in stone. So I will absolutely disagree with the thinking of people like the Minister of the FCT, the former governor of the state, that nothing will happen. Human conduct are not cast in stone. You can't just sit somewhere and say that no, nothing will happen. A whole lot can happen. We must be very clear about this. What it takes to precipitate crisis is usually something very minimal that is usually avoidable. But the solution, the way forward, this was how we started. The Boko Haram that has now become a global issue. Very simple issue. There was a Yusuf who was, maybe if you want to say, religiously untaught. And all that the government needed to do was to handle it with a measure of tact and diplomacy. It was escalated, and decades after, we are still battling with that very little thing. So we must not go that route again. What we have, the insecurity we have in the Northeast, the Northwest, and other parts of the country is a lot to manage. It has taken its toll on it. Must not open, and don't forget the Southeast issue I see on our neck. We must not add another layer in the South. And I think the federal not allowed that the level of tension we are seeing in Rivers State today is doused. And the way it can be doused is that the governor must, again, I'm still insisting, must be told to just ensure that the back channel, and this back channel must come with a measure of sincerity. If I were in his shoes, by now, the allowances of these folks who have not been paid for years would have been paid. They have their accounts. So this idea of let us talk before I pay you is not showing some level of seriousness. On the other side, the Minister of FCT must be prevailed on. We are talking about the House of Assembly members today, but you and I know, and every of our viewers this morning, they are aware that it's simply what they will call the voice of
Jacob and the hand of Esau.
Of Esau and the
voice
skin.
Of Jacob.
So that's exactly what we are saying. Wike is the architect of what those folks are doing. It should also be called, and the federal government actually have the aids to do that now.
Interestingly, just one last take before we move on to other issues away from River State. Going forward, do you, at the end of the day, see Governor Fubara being impeached? And what will this mean for River State's political space? Will this stamp the godfatherism that the governor tried to fight? Is this going to be a trend? Is this going to be a norm? And will the people of Rivers have to accept their fate in this situation?
Well, if the governor continues on this trajectory, I can predict it that in 7 weeks he will be ousted. 7 weeks.
7 whole weeks.
7 weeks. In 7 weeks, he will no longer be the governor of Rivers State. Whether there will be crisis thereafter, like I did say, human beings, you can't predict them. It's not 2 plus 2. Human behavior is not 2 plus 2. There might be crisis, there might not be crisis. My concern is why Professor Odu was also served a notice of misconduct. I have not read details of what is in her own letter. I only had privilege to read details of what was sent to the governor. I really don't know why she also is facing the same issue. It could have been a bit more manageable if the focus is on the governor.
Perhaps it could be stemming from the fact that she is part of the administration and might have also been, rolling with the policies or the moves of her principal, which is the governor. So it's not completely out of place to have the speaker and the other members of the House of Assembly to want to also impeach her alongside her boss.
Well, I agree with you. She might just be a collateral damage to the face-off between Fubara and his SY boss. But it's also going to be a novel issue. It's going to be a novel issue. The first impeachment we heard was the Balarabe Musa issue in Kaduna State. Thereafter, we've had a number of impeachments, but the focus is always on the governor. The deputy will take over and act and continue in this instance. The Anambra issue, the Dariye issue in Plateau, and also the issue we had in Ekiti. I think Ekiti was a bit more complex. We had the governor, the deputy took over for a few days. Then Senator Olujimi took over for a few days before she was finally ousted in a political arrangement and things like that. I think Rivers will not be the best for it. There are several options that can be on the card. If the governor, the deputy is ousted, the speaker is supposed to be there. If there is a crisis, the federal government can declare a state of emergency. So the options are just there. So that's why it's really not a good thing for Rivers to go through. And that's why...
Yeah, carry on, please.
And that's why leaders of thought, they must see it and act before it actually happens. Rather than waiting for it to act, and they are trying to douse the conflagration that occurred because of the carelessness that we are seeing now. They are actually treading on a very careless path.
Well, Mr. Seun Oni, you have just made a prophetic declaration now. 7 weeks. Let's see what happens if this prophecy will come to pass, or if Governor Fubara will still maintain his seat as the governor of Rivers State. Moving on to other issues, we hear that due to Naira's stability, which has excited a lot of Nigerians, and also the lower prices of fuel orchestrated mainly by Dangote Refinery, which has also influenced the NNPC Limited, that the inflation rate in the country is doing well, having dipped to 23.18% in February of 2025. Now, this figure is looking good from my perspective, but from your own perspective, is this some sort of progress?
A whole lot of progress, if I may say. 23.18, and that's back-to-back drop in our inflation figure.
Yeah.
The first one, a whole lot of argument went whether it was a drop or it was a consequence of rebasing. But this one now had actually put a pale to that argument. Also, the ripple effect in the economy is actually showing that we are on the right track economic wise. We might not be where we intend to be, but certainly we are not where we used to be some 6, 7 months ago. Prices of foodstuff across the nation, they are depreciating, and this is a fact that can be checked. It's not fairy tale. Prices of transportation across the length and breadth of the country is getting better, of course occasioned by the price rivalry between the Dangote Refinery Limited and the NNPC Limited, which is a good one for us as a country. So the drop in price, if you go further and you look at the food inflation also for the period equally dropped. Like I did say earlier, is actually a reflection of the reality in the society. And I think that's what we want to see. If it continues this way, I think Nigerians will begin to heave a sigh of relief from the recent dire economic situation we found ourselves, occasioned by the devaluation of our currency and the fuel subsidy removal for nearly 2 years now that we have been going through.
Now, Mr. Seun, a lot of Nigerians might not really be privy to as to how some of these figures are being calculated, and how inflation goes up statistically, or how it comes down statistically. But they do know how it affects them when they go to buy Maggi or rice or vegetable in the market. And we saw a recent video on social media, on TikTok particularly, of a certain core member who had gone on a rant about how the prices of commodities in the country had skyrocketed, and made some really derogatory comments against the president and the president's regime. But beyond the derogatory comments, the major point here is as to how much this hardship is biting hard on the backs of Nigerians. We hear that inflation is dropping and the economy is on a steady rise, but it doesn't really affect the pockets of the common man, and it doesn't really affect how much is being expended when an ordinary Nigerian goes to a shopping mall or a market to purchase certain items. How do we balance this up?
Chigioke, let me be very upfront. My personal opinion from the statement made by the lady, by my training as a journalist, my value as a Christian, her remarks laced with derogatory terms and insult and aspersions, I think clearly is not in good taste. But some of the facts she made, they are actually reality. But I love telling people when we discuss economy as this, issues must be placed in context, in perspective. Why nations were digging well so that they will not be thirsty? Nigeria as a nation was busy buying water and pouring in a dry well. Nations were busy digging well with water so that they will not be thirsty in the future. Nigeria was busy. We saw a dry well. Instead of digging deeper so that we can have our own water, we prefer to go and borrow from IMF, from China, from the World Bank, African Development Bank, and the rest of other multilateral institutions. We were just living on borrowed money. That was our reality. And this reality it was actually nothing that was hidden. It's just that we were pretentious about it. I know, for instance, that the current governor of Anambra State, he was very loud and vocal about it. The current Emir of Kano was very vocal about it. The current head of the World Trade Organization also did meet a whole lot. And I can
And
continue to
these are
mention
all
people.
persons who served in critical financial positions within the country in the last couple of years.
Yes, they were very clear about that we were borrowing, and we were not borrowing to ensure that we put our economy on the right path. We were borrowing to pay salary. When donors were not giving us money again, we went to our printing and minting. We started printing Naira to live fake life. That was the reality. So, is there a possibility of just seeing overnight changes? Certainly not. And history taught us so. For instance, the 1928 Great Depression in the United States was very clear that no nation can come out of economic crisis over the night. It's not something you can come out overnight. You have to work your way out of it, and things like that.
And in your opinion, are some of the policies being initiated by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in line or in tune with this constant need to pull Nigeria out of this hole that it is in and put the economy on a good trajectory that will benefit all Nigerians?
Yes, when he started the first few months, the policies were not the right policies. Not the policy itself, but the method of implementation. The focus was always on the intended policies, but the unintended consequences of policies were not usually factored in. But what we are beginning to see in the past 6 months, thereabout, 7 months thereabout, is that policymakers are now being intentional, not just about their intended policies, but they are also intentional about the unintended consequences of their policies.
Yeah.
And that's why we are seeing the type of improvement we are seeing. And I just hope that they will maintain this steady focus, ensuring that policy knots are tightened and the loose ends, the immediate impact on majority of Nigerians who don't have those type of big monies that can withstand economic shocks. You know, for the rich person, when your economy is tilted towards making them spend less, what they do is that because they have this resource, they can actually move their resources into other portfolios and still make a whole lot of money. So the impact of policies like this, especially economic policies, are usually bare, like you did say earlier, on the majority of people who are already wallowing in poverty. And so any policy that you embark on that now increase that figure, that was what we saw in the first 6-7 months of this administration. More Nigerians were falling into the poverty bracket. And so what we are beginning to see now is that impact on the generality that quickly tells you that your policy is not giving the right vibe. They are now taking cognizance of that. And how do you get that? Mass transportation. How do you get that done? Food, the price of food. So unless a country works on this area, things that affect everyone, you are really not getting it right, and there is really not so much you can do. And so they are getting it right, and I just think they must focus on that, ensure that people are not hungry, the prices of food is a bit steady, and the dip, you know, when prices of goods increase maybe by 2, 3, 4%, it's reasonable. But what we are seeing earlier is that prices of foods were practically increasing as high, sometimes as high as 100, 150%. That was a bad one. And so I think that's the improvement I'm talking about. The things that concerns everyone, when we see rises in them, it should be in a more a measured way.
Realistic and practicable way.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Seun, we have just about 8 minutes to wrap up the conversation, but very importantly, a recent move by former Kaduna State Governor Malam Nasir El-Rufai to move from the All Progressives Congress to the SDP has been met by a lot of criticism, especially from the APC, in what they described as, I will read it out, from kingmaker to crybaby. Now, this is what they described Malam Nasir El-Rufai as. This is also coming off the back of a recent statement by the ex-Kaduna State Governor accusing the incumbent Kaduna State Governor of siphoning local government funds and stowing them away in the United Kingdom and in South Africa, amongst many other allegations that he has leveled against so many people who are within the APC. What do you think is informing this sort of rampage or rampaging that Malam Nasir El-Rufai has embarked on?
Unfortunate for the APC, all the period that Malam Nasir El-Rufai had been within the fold, they have benefited from his nuisance value. People usually find relevance based on these two values: your real value and your nuisance value. Your real value in the political contest is how much victory you can bring to your party due to your clout and your capacity to mobilize voters. The second value is the nuisance value, your ability to cast aspersion, insult opponents, drag them down. And of course, I can give you names of people who have that type of value. Anywhere they go to, the party benefit from that type of value. The minister for 8 years of President Buhari administration carried that type of value. He's from Kwara State, for instance. He tried on several occasions to be governor. He could not win. I don't even think he has control of his federal constituency, where he came from, where he comes from in Oro. But when it comes to going to the press, writing, and the AP, he put the PDP at bay for many years. That's a nuisance value. Nasir El-Rufai actually brought that to the APC. Now he's out of the APC to the SDP. He will carry that nuisance value to the SDP. And I must be honest with you, the APC is feeling that nuisance value every day. In fact, what resulted to this reaction was the interview he granted to the BBC just a few days ago. And the BBC Hausa service is one of the, if not the most listened to platform in northern Nigeria. So the party had to quickly come over and react and save face. We will see this into 2027. So they just have to oil their own party machinery to be able to withstand him tat for tat, tit for tat. But his electoral value will be known after 2027 election. Like I did say in my last appearance, Nasir El-Rufai had actually not shown that he can win election for any party. He became governor riding on the popularity of former President Muhammadu Buhari. When Muhammadu Buhari was not on the ballot and Tinubu was on the ballot, he lost Kaduna to opposition political parties. So he does not have that value that can win election. But 2027 will show whether he has gone to learn lesson and is in a better pool. So for now, APC must be ready to enjoy the nuisance value of Malam Nasir El-Rufai.
Now, if you remember when Governor Uba Sani was bidding for the governorship of Kaduna State, one of the persons who had championed that cause was Malam Nasir El-Rufai, alongside other lawmakers that he had also thrown his weight behind, one of which is his biological son, who is now a member of the House of Representatives. However, for Malam Nasir El-Rufai to come out and say that no local government area in Kaduna State or local government council in Kaduna State receives 50 million naira allocation monthly. This is a grave allegation. Is this something that should really be looked into, or is this just one of those political statements that will easily be swept under the carpet due to lack of credible evidence?
Unfortunately, he who alleges we have to provide proofs. And someone who had been a former governor of the state, instead of going on Twitter, on Facebook, to cast this type of allegation, together with his sons, not just one, his sons, I think it's more honorable to ensure that the right agencies, the EFCC, the ICPC, who are saddled with the responsibility, get credible facts that can ensure that some of this allegation he raised is actually nipped in the bud. I think that's the right thing to do. Now that he's in the opposition, he's in a full position to do that. And like I did say on one of my appearances, the beauty about local government autonomy is that when a local government chairman hands off the resources of the local government to any governor, it's not the governor that will be imprisoned if eventually it's proven to be correct. Because the governor, the deputy, they both have immunity.
Yeah.
But local government chairmen don't have immunity. And so let El-Rufai or anybody, maybe the SDP, they should provide this file to EFCC. EFCC will do the prosecution. If any chairman is found culpable, they don't have immunity. They might be sent to Kuje prison so that they will eat beans in the prison.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen, and let's hope that they adhere to the Supreme Court ruling with regards to the LG financial and administrative autonomy granted to them. We must thank you so much, Mr. Seun. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you. I'm afraid this is as much time will permit for us to take, but it's always a pleasure having you around, and hopefully next time you will be here in the studio with us to talk about more political and developing issues.
Thank you so much. Always a honor and privilege to appear on ADBN.
Thank you. Well, that has been Seun Oni, Editor-in-Chief, Daily Courier, lending his thoughts to matters of national interest from Rivers State, and of course to a recent NBS report on the inflation rate that is doing well in the country. And lastly, talks of the defection from the All Progressives Congress to the SDP by former Kaduna State Governor and former FCT Minister Malam Nasir El-Rufai, which the APC has described as a bitter exit. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we will revisit Rivers State and, of course, the Supreme Court ruling and what it portends for the state, with talks of impeachment hovering over Governor Fubara and his deputy, Professor Udo. Let's take a break. When we come back, the conversation continues.